time. What are some things that you recall from your time in Boston as they were building that championship team? What were some of the intangibles that they were looking for in players? I know you mentioned like the home dynamic just a moment ago, but is there anything else that you guys were kind of looking for off the field in those players that helped construct that championship team?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I remember was two things. One was when we brought David Ortiz, and I don't think they focused on David Ortiz because he was a great individual. He turned out to be great in terms of personality. He was awesome. But what I liked about Theo in those early days was he went out and kind of similar to the Oakland framework, which is like let's see players that maybe hadn't been succeeding because David Ortiz was in Minnesota, hadn't been succeeding with other organizations, and let's see if just a change in scenery will allow this player to succeed. And so I remember that first was it the first year I was there? They had David Ortiz, they had Jeremy Giambi, they had Shea Hillenbrand, who was already with the Red Sox. So they had like a cluster of players that all played kind of the same position, DH, corner infields, and they kind of just threw it against the wall. And it's kind of like what a lot of teams do now with certain positions. It's like, hey, let's bring in a group of guys, let's let them compete, and let's see. Yeah, they weren't successful elsewhere. Let's see if Gio Urshela with the Yankees, he wasn't successful somewhere else, came to the Yankees, and last 2 years have been the best of his career. So a lot of what we're seeing now, Theo was at the forefront in terms of making it more acceptable because Oakland did it. They did it early, but Theo was really the one who did it and saw results because Oakland didn't win, any championships. Sure, they went to the playoffs, but Theo actually did it. And David Ortiz turned out to be a Hall of Fame player just from that big move in that one summer. I remember the summer and early on, we're like, man, this guy's mashing. How do we get him into the lineup? And then they made some moves. The other thing I remember, which is pretty it kind of ties into how they do pitching nowadays with kind of being thinking outside the box. But I don't know if you remember this. Theo had experimented with closer by committee, and it turned out to be kind of a horrible experiment, but not because it wasn't successful. It just didn't give it enough time because everyone was thinking in traditional terms, and the media was skewing us about this isn't going to work, and traditional people were like, this isn't going to work. And lo and behold, what do they do nowadays? Some teams have their designated closer, but a lot of people, it's like, hey, who can close? We might have to bring in a few different people who can, get outs in the ninth inning. And then now with the closer at the beginning, not the closer, the opener, which is the bullpen guy who can open. Those are all creative ideas. And Theo, I think, was at the forefront with being creative and thinking outside the box, which baseball being one of those traditional minded sports was difficult because it wasn't seen as popular, but it helped that we succeeded. And 03 we had a great season. 04 we won the World Series, and so winning helped. But yeah, those are two things that I remember the most: the closer by committee, and that summer where we had all these players, or we weren't sure how it was all going to unfold. But David Ortiz ended up taking over. Giambi played a good, played for us that whole year as well. Shea Hillenbrand got traded just so we can open some of that, the spots for these guys, and the rest is history. So